Good afternoon, all of you, all the sports lover who are tuning into this session. Welcome to the eighth episode of our webinar series. I, Arshi Yasin, co-founder of The Bridge, presenting you an insightful conversation, hopefully. So today we have Mr. Siddharth Raman, who is the Chief Business Officer of Sportz Interactive, is with us. So Sportz Interactive, it's a one-stop shop for all the sports digital solutions. And Sportz Interactive have partnered with all the right holders, federations, broadcasters, publishers, teams, and brands. So hi, Siddharth, welcome you in this session.
Hi, Arshi. Thank you for having me over here, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone who's joined in as well.
So, Siddharth, Sportz Interactive last week celebrated its 18th birthday. It's like, wow, 18 years in the sports industry and delivering world-class content and everything, whatever you do, the kind of work which Sportz Interactive has been doing, it's been great. And 18 years is almost 2 decades, and it's a long time, and I'm sure Sportz Interactive comes with a lot of insight. And for the audience who are tuned in, the agenda of today's conversation is we will talk about fan engagement in times of social distancing, and fan engagement in Olympic sports versus cricket and esports, and a lot of other things. So we have a lot to talk, and when it comes to fan engagement is one of the most important part of for any sport, for the growth of popularity of any sport. So let me just dive straight into the conversation. Siddharth, you tell us which is like your first that fan moment while you were growing up.
Interesting question. I think my first fan moment is watching white ball cricket and all these players in these nice, bright, colorful jerseys playing in Australia and New Zealand, and that's my first memory of getting hooked on to cricket as a sport, and I obviously watched all of it on TV. That was my first fan moment when it came to watching sport at home, and this the year following that. I was fortunate enough to be able to watch a test match live in Bombay at the stadium at Wankhede. It was an India versus England test match. I remember it was March '93, and this was the famous Shardashram versus England test match where you had Vinod Kambli, Sachin Tendulkar, Praveen Amre all in the team, and I remember Ramakant Astikar also being there in the stadium to watch his students take on England, and one moment from there which I always cherish, and I still do whenever I enter a cricket stadium and I watch the stand, is you enter the stands and you go up, and the first view that you get of the ground and the pitch, it sends goosebumps. It gives you goosebumps, and I still get that to this day. And for any sporting arena, for that matter, right? When I enter and when you're waiting to watch live sport, and for me that's the that's fan engagement at its most primal form. And to answer your question, those were my the earliest fan engagement memories that I had, my fan moments.
Yeah. And see, obviously, we all of us are badly hit by the pandemic, and it's been like, okay, pre-COVID and now COVID. So obviously, the essence of fan engagement will change, and it won't be the same, at least in the near future, that we all can sense. So, how do you see this situation where we cannot like go and cheer in the stadiums for our teams?
Yes, it is something that none of us are used to, and it's something that we are seeing experiencing for the first time. But as people who work in the business of fan engagement, I think it is important to also see this as an opportunity to innovate, an opportunity to still be able to delight fans on the back of digital offerings. Even though a fan is sitting at home and watching the game, while social distancing needs to be maintained, I think the connections you can build on the back of digital technology still exist to help create that live atmosphere, right? And I think that's the opportunity that all rights holders, all leagues, all teams, all brands will be looking to tap into going forward. And I think we've already been seeing a few instances of that wherever sport is reopened, primarily in Europe. And I think that's kind of leading the way in terms of how this how things will pan out for the next 6 to 12 months. Because the way to look at this is it's not so what if you don't have 30 to 40,000 fans in the arena. It's great to have it. Please don't get me wrong. But even if you don't have that, you still have millions of fans online, and there's a latent fandom that needs to be tapped into at a time like this. And that's the opportunity for everyone working in the business of sport to look at, and therefore what can we do over there to really innovate further and deliver experiences like we never have before.
Right. So Siddharth, also let's talk about how we have seen how fan engagement has evolved in the last, I would say, 50 years, and more so after the rise of social media. And now, I think the most important change which I see is that now even the fan, they have a way to communicate or reach out to their favorite sports star. And that is something which was not, we could not have imagined maybe 50 years back. So it was like only the broadcasting was done on Doordarshan. And now we have like on social media, all the pages are doing live, and all the broadcasters are also doing live on TV as well as on social media. So that has been a big change. So how do you see, because see, you obviously you have clients like Hero ISL and a lot of other reputed clients. So how do you see the social media strategies now, the role which it plays in during the match and also in the off season? So what are the different strategies which happens there?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first part of I'll just add on to what you fan engagement over the past 50 odd years is initially all the fan. I mean, the best fan experience you could get was being there in the stadium or listening to commentary on the radio, and then that evolved to being able to watch a match on TV, which is being streamed to you from any corner of the world, and then getting that experience at home with your friends and family. And then from there, it's now moved on to TV plus a second screen, right? Apart from being able to watch it in the stadium as well. I think that's something that has seen the steady evolution of fandom increase. I think what this is also brought about is the change in currency of fan engagement, if I can use that term, right? And to put it simplistically, say even up to about 15 or 20 years ago, the most prized possession was an autograph from your favorite player. But now it's how do I get a selfie with my favorite player, or how do I get a personalized message from my favorite player, right? Or from a bunch of my heroes, and I think that also gives you an indication of how fan expectations also evolved with time, and I think that's where there's a massive opportunity on the back of digital technologies to be able to fuel that part. That just wanted to add that to the first thing that you mentioned. I think in terms of social media strategies for an in-season and off-season approach, I think it's important to call out that India is still very different compared to a lot of the other markets. And when I say a lot of the other markets, here, your mature global markets like Europe and US, where you have sports leagues and teams that essentially go on for 75 to 80% of the year, right? They are in season, so to speak, where matches are happening is anywhere between 8 to 9 months of the year, and their off season is 2 to 3 months. Whereas with the leagues that you have in India, it's exactly the opposite. So the fundamental challenge when a tournament is going, stay in a certain level in the off season from an India perspective, right? To give you a bit of context, during the last IPL, all teams put together across all their social media assets drove about close to 500 million social media engagements over a 3-month period, which is a considerable number, right? Now imagine if you had the same the same structure of a league going on for more than 3 months. Imagine the amount of interactions you'll be able to drive on social media on the back of something like that. So I think that's something that is going to be an evolving challenge that we need to look at from a social media perspective, especially for Indian leagues. And staying relevant at a time when your league is not happening is always going to be a challenge, right? So you need to be nimble. You need to look at opportunities to tap into, which are relevant at that point in time, which are contextual for fans, which tap into either the geography they are from, or their likes or desires, or even tying up with relevant influencers or people who are top of mind at that point in time on digital and social. So I think agility and nimbleness is always something that's required, specifically in the off season from an Indian social media fan engagement perspective, and that's something we try and do. And over there you need to layer it by sport, right? What you do for cricket may not necessarily work for kabaddi, and similarly for football as well. So it's a little nuanced in that way, but at a high level, it's how do you stay relevant at a time like that on the back of whatever's going on, and that will come on the back of agility and nimbleness.
Yeah, that's very true. And now even during COVID, we can see that sports persons are continuously posting about their day-to-day life on social media. And even for fans, it's good to see the non-sporting season side for athletes. So it's been April, it's been 3 months of lockdown, and somewhere do you see that fans will get saturated because it's like a filler content and no sports happening? So how do you see the situation?
So I think that's the challenge for us to address, right? How do we ensure that it doesn't saturate? And that's a business problem to solve for all leagues and teams. So to give you some context, when the last month of live sport happened, and you're also building up to the IPL, right? So there was a lot of anticipation coming in up to the middle of March, until when all these unfortunately the lockdown kicked in, and all the tournaments had to be pushed out. There was a significant momentum building over there in terms of this fan engagement on social. It was expected that there'd be a dip. What needed to be seen was whether that dip it continues on a month on week basis, or is it a V shaped, is it an L shaped, or is it a U shaped? Right? I think that is the curve that we wanted to see in terms of fan engagement. I think what we've seen over the past 3 months is it's actually closer to a V shape or a U shape. So it's definitely not saturating, and there are multiple different reasons for that. And again, everybody's done different things to innovate. The first thing that all leagues did was go back to archive footage and try and do nostalgia or throwbacks to drive engagement and get fans to interact and share, like, comment on those pieces of content. But that would, if you if we just continue doing that, it will obviously lead to saturation. So therefore, from there, I think it pivoted to how do you drive gaming activations, how do you drive social media innovations, where you even may need to get into an activation which needs to be done with two teams coming on board, right? Which you might never have done earlier, right? So you need to plan with the social media team of another team and work in collaboration to activate both your fan bases together, which in a normal world may not have necessarily ever happened. But when it's happened, it's driven significant engagement over there. We've seen that in the IPL, we've seen that in the in the Premier League as well. So those are the second set of innovations that happen. And the third one, which I think is independent of the teams and leagues, but something that's really picked up, is, like you said, players deciding to go live on Instagram and having these chats with each other, right? I read a journalist talking about tweeting about it, that if players continue talking to each other like this and share their insights directly with their fans, journalists might have a tough time trying to justify their existence. Obviously, the person was joking, but it's true to a certain extent. That I think one is you get to see you get to see your heroes in a completely unsanitized environment. Right? They are not in a studio with these heavy duty lights and there are multiple cameras. Their manager over there. There's a host. Everything is scripted. They know what to say, what not to say, and they're very very measured in their conversation. The very fact that our players were sitting at home, talking into their phone and talking to a friend at the other end, with just millions of other people watching, right? I think that that broke down a lot of barriers, and that just helped us see a side of our heroes which we never would have gotten to see otherwise, right? And I think that's actually set the foundation for all future fan engagement activities, because you can't go back to what it was pre-COVID, right? Because you've seen what a Suresh Raina and a Irfan Pathan interaction was like. You've seen a Virat Kohli, Kevin Peterson interaction and what that was like. You've seen Rahul Dravid go live on, or at least attempting to go live on Instagram, and that itself is I think that there can be a separate webinar on the entertainment value of that. How we try to go live on webinar on Instagram with Crick Info and the entire the entertainment question around it, because fans were giving in the comments, were telling him what to do. They asked him what phone he had. They asked him what OS he's on, and they asked him to change these particular settings. I mean, imagine imagine having a conversation with him like that in the real world, right? I think that's something that this period has shown us. And now I think teams and federations also realize that this is how fans will now be used to seeing athletes. Anything that's a deviation from this, which is their most authentic self, will be seen through. And that's going to be a long-term implication for us as to how we utilize player personas to continue driving fan engagement. And it's going to be a significant aspect of social media strategies for teams and leagues going forward.
Right, and in fact, the series of Sunil Shetty, he came live with Shashi Tharoor. I mean, imagine. So he came live with a versatile set of people. Shashi Tharoor, obviously Virat Kohli was there, and Ranveer Singh. So it's a different kind of conversation at all. So it's very good to see. So coming back to talking about fan engagement.
Absolutely, and you mentioned Chetri. Sorry, because you mentioned Chetri. Sorry, just one.
Go ahead. Yeah. Yes.
One point is you mentioned Chetri. I think that's a fabulous point, because he's obviously known as India's national team football captain, and obviously a legend in Indian football. But it's very interesting to see different facets of his personality, right? Exactly like you said, able to hold his own in a conversation with Shashi Tharoor, able to do a captain talking to captain conversation with Virat Kohli. He got Ranveer Singh to actually talk about his advertising days, and he got him to recite that jingle that he had written for Good Night, if I'm not mistaken, and that's content that fans absolutely love, right? You wouldn't see that in a scripted conversation otherwise. It just came out in the spontaneity of it, and you could make out how authentic and spontaneous that was, and I think those are the kind of things that really need to continue looking forward to from a fan engagement perspective.
Yeah, true. And so I think we also saw Leander Pace coming live with someone else. I don't remember exactly. So even that was a good conversation. So Siddharth, since you are like inside the industry, and you are the Chief Business Officer at Sports Interactive, and of course we will talk about sponsors and your clients, and how fan engagement is a major part of sponsors supporting any sport, right? So now with virtual fan engagement, so what do you think will change from the brand side of things, from the sponsor?
Sorry, I think there's a slight lag in what I'm hearing from you, but I think this is around how you can drive sponsorship value on the back of fan engagement on digital. So
yeah,
I'll take it from there. So look, if you put yourself in the shoes of the sponsor, why are they fundamentally looking to associate with a sports team, right? It's to be able to connect with the fan base that comes along with it, and tap into that latent fandom over there. And earlier, valuation models were based on obviously your TV reach, but also the value you're getting on the back of tickets for matches, VIP hospitality, in-stadium activations, branding in the stadium, so on and so forth. And a lot of those are actually not going to be available in a post-COVID world. And when you're having games behind closed doors in empty stadia, while the broadcast reach will remain, I think digital comes in to supplement or to substitute what you would have been getting inside the stadium, right? So the metrics of evaluation of ROI for a sponsor also are going to change. So it's no longer the value of the tickets or the value of the hospitality box or the value of the in-stadium activation they'll be able to do. It's actually now going to be based on the value of the engagements, the value of the user base, the value of the user acquisition, the value of the time spent on the digital assets that I'm going to be creating to help activate these sponsorships, right? So if I as a sponsor were, had the opportunity to build a VIP box inside the stadium and get, 1,000 folks for a game every time, and I'd assign a specific value to that to justify my sponsorship investment. Now it's about, I've built a digital destination, which is, on the back of data, technology, content. I have gamification going over there. I have useful information going out to fans. There's a layer of interactivity for them also. So you're driving deep level engagement over there. And the value you're going to generate out of that is probably going to be the same, if not more, than what you have gotten from just, doing the in-stadium activation. I think that's going to be the fundamental shift in the way you start evaluating sponsorships as well. And hopefully we start seeing more of that as live sport resumes in India as well.
Yeah, that's true. So I think there's a slight lag from my side. So to the audience, if it's like unbearable from my side, do let me know on the chat section. So I will just change the position from where I'm live right now. So yeah, coming back to the fan engagement part, as you said rightly, that data plays a very important role. So in terms of parameters, so what are the different parameters of data which is important? So when we say the data is important in fan engagement, what actually do we mean by that?
Yeah, so I think even before we go into that, it's important to call out there are two types of data, right? Because data is used quite loosely as a term. It's important to understand what are the two broad types of data. One is your performance data, your sports related data, which is your, Virat Kohli, so many thousand international runs, these many centuries, these many 4 6s, etc. That's your sport data. And the second is your fan data, which is being able to have information about what your fan base is like. And even over there are layers at a macro and a micro level. So I think the first part is clear in terms of how performance analytics and how you can use that data to tell stories and build narratives on digital and even on broadcast. So I won't spend too much time on that. I think the second one is where there's a massive opportunity to tap into, especially from an India perspective. Globally, that's happening, and again, it's not like it's prevalent everywhere, but there have been a handful of teams and leagues that have successfully implemented a model where they have a high level view of who their fan base is. Like, I have 600 million fans globally. 30% of them are from this part of the world. So 40% of them are within this age demographic, which is great to have. And then you need to go a level deeper in terms of how much information do I have about each of these 600 million for me to be able to communicate with them in a personalized manner, right? That personalization at scale is going to be the fundamental challenge going forward. And actually, I wouldn't even call it a challenge. I think that's the business problem you need to find a solve for. And I think in a country like India, where it's still very early stages for something like that. But if I'm an IPL team, it's great. I have 20-25 million fans on social media. I'll only be able to get a certain amount of macro level data about them, right? But if I want to slice and dice that data further, the only way I can do that is if I build my own digital destination where fans where there's a compelling enough proposition for fans to come and register and be able to share the data that I need from them to help tailor their experience and deliver something that's way more personalized, right? And it's still early stages over there from an India perspective, but I think there are enough examples, like I said, from a global perspective, right from, you mapped out at an individual level, this particular fan has been a fan of my team for the past 5 years. The last time he's watched the game in the stadium was, 6 months ago. At that time, he bought a ticket for this particular stand. And when he came to watch the game, he bought this merchandise. This is how much he spent on food. This is how much time he spends on our website. This is how much, these are the kind of games he's actually played, which are available on our website. And here's, how much of that is actually shared on his or her social media. So that's the level of granularity that's the opportunity that we need to tap into going forward, which is still very early stages right now from an India perspective.
You have touched a lot of important data points, like especially towards the merch revenue when it comes, and obviously we need to study data in detail, like what is the, let's say, the spending capacity of fan or whatever. So for sports fans, so what is the difference between a fan and a customer?
This is a nice question, because when I wanted to move from working in a tech company to trying to figure out a career in sport, when I told my boss I'm resigning because I want to do this, the first thing he told me is, what is sports marketing? And if there is sports marketing, then you should have shampoo marketing, car marketing, fridge marketing. So what is sports marketing? Which was a good question. I did not have an answer to at that time, but fortunately, through my time in the industry and from what I've learned in B school, I've been able to find what I think is a convincing enough answer to that. And the way I approach this is, let me ask you this, Arshi. You buy a certain brand of a phone or a soap, hypothetically speaking, right? Now, do you know what the share price of that is? And even if you do you track it on a daily basis? And if the share price goes up by 50%, do you actually go on the streets and celebrate, right? And if you're the brand that you use as a soap becomes a market leader, do you and all of the users of that brand take a parade and block the entire, block the main roads of the city and go on an open top bus celebrating that? I think that's the fundamental difference between a fan and a consumer, right? And a fan does irrational things, which is where a consumer will not do that, right? And it's that level of passion that sport elicits, the emotions that sport is able to invoke, which you're not able to typically do in a regular, as a regular consumer. And I don't want to shoot myself in the foot over, no disrespect whatsoever to anybody else working in marketing, outside of sport, but this is the way I like to justify sports marketing, and why you need a separate, a stream called sports marketing, and therefore why it's important to treat a fan in a different way from a consumer. And again, there are different stages of fandom, right? And this is again an interesting way for anybody who's working in the business of sport or is looking to get into, is always wondering, how do you tap into fandom? There are 7 different layers of fandom, and this is not something that we've come up with. This is already there in theory. This is a Philip Kotler model. The father of marketing also found it imperative to write something separately for sports marketing. He's written a book called The Elusive Sports Fan, and over there he's spoken about the 7 different stages of fandom. Right. The first one is indifferent, where you're not necessarily aware of what's going on, and you really don't know what this is about, right? And this is probably, to give you an example, this is probably where kabaddi was pre 2014, right? Everybody thought, okay, it's a desi sport, I mean, why will I watch it? But then the next stage after indifference is eyeballs, where you're willing to actually watch it on TV or watch it on a streaming device, where it's something that's captured it's piqued your interest, and it's something that you're willing to part away with a bit of your attention with and spend some time on, right? And that's what kabaddi did in 2014 when it launched the Pro Kabaddi League, right? Then from you have your indifferent, you have your eyeballs, then you have the wallets, right? These are people who are not just willing to spend time but also willing to spend money, right? I'll buy a ticket and I'll go and watch the match in a stadium, right? I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to part away with my hard-earned money to do that, which is the third level. And this happens in cricket everywhere, right? Cricket fans, the clamor is always to try and get a ticket to watch a match in the stadium. Then from your wallets, you have collectors, and collectors not just go and watch matches, but these are, I think over here, the way to look at it, these are your from an India perspective at least, also all your Premier League fans, right? They are the guys who want the most latest version of their favorite team's jersey. So if my team has got a new shirt sponsor on board, the earlier shirt that I had is no longer the up to date, so I need to go and buy a new one. I'll buy the bobbleheads, I'll buy the flags, I'll buy the scarves. Those are the collectors. After collectors, you have attachers, and attachers are willing to pay money to go and watch their favorite team playing, no matter which part of the world they're playing in, right? So this is what a lot of Indians did for the cricket World Cup, right? So whenever a cricket World Cup happens in any place apart from India, the economy of that country is boosted for those 2 or 3 months because there's a huge influx of Indian fans going in and seeing. And then your Barmi Army, Bharat Army, and all the other fan armies also are an example of that, where you can even uh, go and travel either to different parts of the country or different parts over the world to do that. Then that's your attachers. And then you have the insiders, and insiders are very rare. I think the only insider I can think of from an Indian sport perspective is Sudhir Gautam, the only fan who made it to the dressing room at the Wankhede on 2nd of April 2011 after India won the World Cup, and he was the only fortunate fan to hold that trophy with the rest of the team, right? And then the last one, which ideally wouldn't want any fan to be in, is ensnared, right? These are the kind of fans who will riot when their favorite team doesn't do well, or when their favorite players don't perform, or it might even adversely impact their health. It could be someone who got a heart attack when Javed Miandar hit that last ball six in Sharjah, right, way back in 1986. So those are the 7 different stages of fandom, and the reason I kind of laid that out is because based on which sport you're in and which team you're kind of working on, it's important to identify which layer of which stage your fans are at, and therefore you need to craft a communication and marketing strategy to be able to move them further up the ladder, right? And that's something that is extremely critical from a fan perspective. So it's important to understand where your fans are at, what level of the ladder they're at, and therefore what is it that will appeal to them to keep moving them further up till the point of attachers or insiders.
That was quite detailed, Siddharth, I must say it. Yeah.
I do this for a living, so I need to know this.
Yeah. So, Siddharth, we all are seeing that after pandemic, there is a high rise in the user number of esports, especially PUBG in India, since it's a mobile game. So, just help us to understand your deep understanding on the rise of esports, and where does India stand overall on the esports front?
So short answer is early days, but definite potential. And again, just to break it down for folks, I think esports, again, like data, is a very loosely used term, right? So I think the way to look at it is from an overall gamut of online gaming, and within online gaming you have esports, casual games, and fantasy games. Right now, esports is one part of it. I think esports, the way to look at the model is exactly like how you would look at from a sports perspective, right? And again, I'm approaching this from a fan engagement lens. There are 3 broad stakeholders in the esports business, right? One is your game publisher stroke developer, the guys who actually are building those games. The second is tournament organizers who bring different gamers together to come and play against each other. And the third is obviously the gamers and the gamers stroke streamers themselves, right? And for each of them, there's an opportunity to build different, avenues for fan engagement. And the way to look at this is exactly like how you would look at it for sport, which is you have your organizers, you have your broadcasters, and you have your teams over here, right? But I think the nuance that comes in something like esport, because it's largely digital driven, you'll be able to drive a lot more interactivity and personalized experiences for fans, right? And this is happening in a lot of countries globally right now, and I'm sure we'll come to India also soon, where you can actually pay to watch someone play, or you can actually pay for to boost someone to do better in a particular game, right? At a very, very basic level. So I think that level of interactivity, where an individual fan feels he or she can contribute to what's going on their screen, is the power of esport from a fan engagement perspective, right? And I think that's that's the massive opportunity that we can look at going forward as well. And then there's obviously stuff around data, content, where you need to know who's done well against a particular player in a particular form of, in a particular form of the game, and so on and so forth. So there's a data aspect to it. And then all of this is, tying into the ability to build and publish great content that can go out on digital channels to drive further engagement, right? But at a fundamental level, I think esport also just works well because it taps into that inherent uncertainty that's there in sport, right? In live sport as well, in physical live sport, where you don't know what the outcome is till you reach the end, and that's what gets people hooked. And how do you just ensure that you're keeping you're able to deliver the best experience throughout the entire duration to drive deeper engagement?
So do you see Sports Interactive venturing into esports? If yes, what is the plan?
Short answer, yes. And I think the plan is simple. Right? Anything that we can do to revolutionize the sports fan experience when it comes to esports is something that we will always be open to doing. And like I said, it could be across any of these three stakeholders that I mentioned earlier, and across data, tech, and content. That will be our approach to anything that we get into.
Sure. So we can see a couple of questions coming in. So we will take the questions towards the end of the session. So all the attendees who are here can put their question in the chat section. And so as you said that online gaming, it's divided into esports and fantasy sports and other e-gamings as well. So fantasy sports has also played a major role in engaging the fans. And so in India, if you see, especially PUBG is on rise, and PC gamings, obviously one reason is because of the mobile phone penetration as compared to PCs. So fantasy games in India, how do you see it? Because you have worked with FIFA and UEFA. So how do you see, will the PC gaming taken up by the population of India?
So again, on fantasy, you need to look at it from a different lens for India, right? When globally, fantasy ever since it's picked up over the past, been about classic fantasy, where you need to build a team at the beginning of a season. There are certain number of substitutions you can make throughout. You have a budget within which you have to form a team, etc., which appeals to the fanatics, so to speak, right? The hardcore fans who are willing to invest their time and effort, keep an eye out on injury news, keep an eye out on the weather for a particular match, and therefore ensure they want the right mix. I think what's picked up in India is daily fantasy, right? Which is talking to the fan, right? Which is not necessarily just the fanatic, but even a regular fan, where the opportunity is a match today. The other teams that are playing, come and form your 11, or how many players in the team you require, and based on how these people do, you have an opportunity to win points or even win money, right? And I think that's the part that's really picked up from a fantasy perspective in India. And then the other part around fantasy, which you mentioned, which is there's the adoption of mobile. Mobile is the first point of entry for 95% of these users, right? And 95 also might be a lower number. So everything that we do needs to be from the lens of how will the experience render on mobile, and how do we just ensure that anybody who's logging in from their mobile screen gets the most seamless experience. And all of this, like I said, is from a daily fantasy perspective, right? And because daily fantasy has really boomed over the past 3 to 4 years, today we have anywhere between, I think, 80 to 100 daily fantasy operators in the country, and I think there's room for more, right? I think there is going to be, as the category is growing, you might see a little bit of consolidation among certain companies, but it's not like they're all fighting for the same. It is a zero-sum game, right? The category itself is growing. The number of people coming online are growing. The number of people who are playing and paying to play also are growing. I was just reading an article, I think a couple of weeks ago, where the fantasy itself just last year contributed about 750 crores in taxes to the government, right? For the people who are, this is taxes. This is not the amount that people have actually paid, but the deductions that happen on winnings, which I think is phenomenal. That it's a great way to for a rights holder from a path to monetization perspective, and it's also helping build a case for something that's a tremendous game of skill.
Yeah, indeed, true. That's a completely new avenue, and it's in a pretty much nascent stage in our country. So obviously, it will grow from here going forward. So since Sports Interactive has been the, I would say, pioneers in also revolutionizing the entire content and data and the fan experience, and obviously the role of tech is important here. So how do you see like in European leagues, we can see the use of tech via AR and VR, and it's not happening obviously on the same scale in India, but things are growing in a good way. So the role of tech in across Indian sporting ecosystem.
So when you talk about AR and VR, I'll address both of them separately. The shorter one is barriers to adoption are very high, which is why it might take longer for us to see some progress over there. But I think there's a massive opportunity in AR. And again, you need to look at both of these from the lens of scale, right? Because that is what's going to appeal to leagues, teams, rights owners, and sponsors at the end of the day, right? If you've got something which only 200 fans are using, it's still really not going to appeal to folks to want to invest behind it. But I think that's where AR is playing an interesting role, and augmented reality on the back of platforms like Facebook and Instagram, where you have their base the Spark AR studio over there. We're able to build a lot of AR effects just on the back of those platforms. Is something that helps enhance a lot of the fan engagement online, right? So I might be a supporter of an IPL team, and I may not be in the stadium, but I want to show my fandom to the rest of the world. So I power up my camera, I open up the filter on Facebook, it detects my face, and it puts my team's face paint on me, right? And I'm able to take a virtually, and I'm able to take a photo of that and publish that on my timeline and let the world know about my fandom, right? And I think that's where augmented reality plays an interesting role. And on the back of augmented reality, you can also bring fans closer to certain experiences which they wouldn't have got access to otherwise. And it's how do you superimpose yourself in your favorite team's dressing room, right? So as long as you have the 3D model of what of a team's dressing room looks like, you can recreate that entire experience on the AR platform, and a fan can actually place himself or herself over there and get a feel of what that might look like. And again, it's like I said, the currency of what fan engagement is changing. What was autographs earlier is now selfies and photographs, and this takes it probably one step further, where it's me in the dressing room, right? It's me in my favorite team's dressing room, and I think that's the opportunity you have on the back of VR. VR, like I said, is still some time away, and that's because of the fundamental adoption from a tech and hardware perspective, we might probably not be able to get enough scale on.
Sure. So let's take a couple of questions. So and so first of all, so Devraj Sharma is saying that very knowledgeable session, getting to learn so much. So thank you, Siddharth, for this.
Thank you, Devraj.
And so we have one question from Parag. He's saying that we know esports has a separate fan base, but how do we market esports to the orthodox cricket/football loving Indian sports audience? How do we welcome them to initial stage of fandom and gradually make them from eyeballs fans to collectors or wallet fans?
Interesting question, Parag. And again, this is my personal opinion, and I'd like to caveat this with my answer with that. It's not something that probably even Sports Interactive. This is not representative of what Sports Interactive's POV might be. I think if you look at it, when you're marketing esports, you're marketing the players, you're marketing the guys who are actually playing the game, right? And how do you help build personas for them to pique interest for people to come and then watch what they're doing, right? Because if you try and explain what PUBG is, what Dota is, or what Counter Strike is, I think it might be too layered, and you might, especially for the Indian audience. But if you say, here's Parag Agarwal from Jaipur, 25 years old, engineer, but dropped out of college to play this full time. He's gone against his family's wishes to do so, but look at how well he's doing. Come and support him. Hypothetically speaking, I think that could be one way to look at how we can market esports to the Indian audiences, and that's where you get them from the eyeballs to the from the indifferent to the eyeballs. And once you got them in as eyeballs, then you'll be able to build the nuances about the sport, what they are watching, and then get them further up the ladder. But I think at a very high level, when you start off with, I think it's important to hero building around the players who are actually playing the sport is going to be an important hook for the Indian audiences.
Great. So we have Kevin is asking an interesting question. Kevin is saying online and social media changes so rapidly. Yeah, it's dynamic. So new platforms keep on coming. How do you keep up or decide which innovations to go with and which to keep away from?
So Kevin, thanks for that question. I think the way to approach something like that is we, as sports fans, we ourselves are deeply embedded in the digital ecosystem to keep an eye out on what could pick up and has the potential to grow big, and therefore what we need to follow up on. So I think I can explain this with a couple of examples. So augmented reality is something that we at Sports Interactive actually built out 6 months before it was open to anybody in India on Facebook as a platform, and on the back of a partnership that we have going with the platform. And we were able to actually see how that works and drive significant scale on the back of something like that. And then we knew that this is something that can pick up. And at a fundamental level, it's always about answering the question is this adding value to a fan, right? If I were a fan, would I enjoy doing this, right? If I were a fan, would I part with my time and effort or attention to spend time doing this, right? And if the answer is yes, it's something worth pursuing. And the second one, from a platform perspective specifically, this is something that unfortunately is not in our control, and with evolving platform algorithms, we just need to be on top of what's happening, right? So Facebook was where the entire all the engagements were until say 3 or 4 years ago. But with the rise of Instagram, while you have a significant audience on Facebook, what you're seeing is you're getting significantly higher amounts of engagements on Instagram. And when I say significantly high, these are multiple, right? These are like 3 or 4 times the total amount of interactions of Facebook is what you're getting on Instagram, with half of what you have on Facebook. How the interactions are shifting, where fans are spending more time, and therefore how do you focus more of your activities on a platform like that. And that guides us in our platform strategy, right? So whenever we are working with any sports entity, it's not a one size fits all across platform. It's very important to have a very clear platform strategy. What is the role of Facebook? What's the role of Instagram? What's the role of Twitter and YouTube from a fan's lens, right? If I were a fan, why would I be going to these platforms? And therefore, what is it that we need to be giving them over there instead of just plastering the same thing across the board?
Yeah, that was great. So we have a question from Arjun. He's asking, do you think sports leagues and franchises can be sustainable businesses with the absence of fans in stadium? This is a very critical question.
Short answer, yes. Like I said, see, let's make no bones about it. Fans not being in the stadium is obviously not the best scenario, but I don't think it's a question. It will have an impact on the long-term sustainability of the business, because what you're at the end of the day, it's also the TV plus digital audience that's driving a lot of value across the board, right? So I think the short-term view is there might be a bit of a reduction or I want to say erosion. There's a bit of reduction in the value that you might see coming from there, but that value can be, like I said, substituted or even in certain places increased on the back of what you can do on digital.
Yeah, right. So Siddharth, we spoke a lot about fan engagement in sport, cricket, in football, in esports. Now let's talk a bit more about Olympic sports. And 2020 was supposed to be the Olympic year, and unfortunately, because of COVID, it's not happening, and it's been postponed to next year. And Olympics is like a once in 4 year celebration, and Olympics sports fans, they are very enthusiastic towards it. So how do you think the sentiment towards fan engagement will change with with Olympics being postponed to next year?
The optimist in me feels that the Olympics being postponed will actually generate more interest, right? Because the very fact that it didn't happen this year and is going to happen next year is on top of mind for a lot of folks. And when it happens, people will be more keen on seeing how are they, how are the games panning out in a post-COVID world, right? So I think that there's a positive way to look at that. From a fan engagement perspective, whether it's happening, and again, this is a very India-specific answer, right? Whether it's happening in 2020 or 2021, I don't think it makes too much of a difference, because the fundamental problem for us, as from a fan engagement perspective for Olympic sports, is interest peaks in those 3 months leading up to the games, right? It's not like you have 4 years of sustained interest leading to the next edition of the games. It's always been about those 3 or 4 months, and I think that's the problem. That's a challenge that we need to find a solve for, right? And that's going to come. That there's no overnight solve for it. And to do well at the Olympics, you need to get fans excited about the Olympics. You need to do well at the Olympics, right? And we can do that only if we have the potential to win more medals. Now, we were looking forward to 2020 for a record haul in terms of the number of medals India will be able to get back, and that's the momentum that we need even in the remaining 3 to 4 years, right? Leading up to the next edition of the games in Paris. And I think that's the part that we need to solve from a fan engagement perspective. PV Sindhu should not be top of mind only on the Sunday she's won a Super Series, or every 4 years for the Olympics, right? PV Sindhu needs to be top of mind throughout the year. And that relevance for fans to be willing to support and engage with what anything to do with PV Sindhu is something we need to focus on. And again, PV Sindhu is an example. I'm sure there are multiple others. And I think the other thing that there's a huge opportunity for us from an Olympic sport perspective, which a lot of people don't talk about, is the Paralympics and para athletes. Right? I think just the sheer amount of medals you won even last time in the which is no mean feat at all, right? The fact that you got para athletes going and winning at a global stage at the Olympic is something we need to be immensely proud of, and we need to be telling more of those stories. And this is across the board with everyone working in the sport business, whether you're a brand, whether you're an agency, whether you're a publication like The Bridge, which you are doing a fantastic job of, when it comes to talking about Olympic sports. But I think we need more people doing that, and that's going to be the fundamental change that we need to look from a shift towards fan engagement. And like I said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think the people involved in doing this also are well aware that there is no silver bullet that is going to change this overnight. Right? It is a long 3, 4, 5 year roadmap that you need to build towards. And I think the examples could be something like what China did in 2000 when they started building their team for building their contingent for the 2008 Olympics. Right? They identified 5, 6, 7 year olds in 2000. Right? The German football team that won the World Cup in 2014, the foundation for that was laid in the 2000s, right? Yeah. So I think it's important for us also to realize that and that's how you build a fan base for football in Germany with the new generation, and for Olympic sports with fans in China. So I think that's the part that we also need to be cognizant of as we look to build engagement for non-cricket Olympic sports from a long run. I hate to give a cricket parlance, but it's a test match and not a T20, and we need to play session by session to ensure you're making progress.
100% true. And this brings me to the fact that a lot needs to be done at the grassroots level. So there is no dearth of talent in our country. And for example, let's say Northeast, which has become a hub of producing great sporting talents, be it Hima Das, Mary Kom, and now we have Jeremy, and we have so many much more people. But then the thing is, these talent get identified much later than how early it should be. But let's see, things are becoming better with every passing year, and all the entities in this, all the stakeholders in the sporting ecosystem are putting in their effort in one way or the other. And let's just hope that everything will be fine
Correct.
going forward. And as of now, we have a battle to fight, which is COVID. And let's all hope that Olympics happens next year, and all of our sports persons who have qualified for Olympics, they do well. And so let's just hope for that. And so we will wrap up the conversation in a bit. And I will take one question, which is an interesting question from Arjun. He's saying, what do you think about golf as the sport in India? Do you believe it has a potential to grow considering the new technological advancement in the sport? So he's talking about golf.
Arjun, so the answer to your question is, I think any sport has the potential to grow in India if we identify who the fans are, right? What's the kind of fan base you're trying to build on top of that? So I think golf as a sport globally also is comparatively niche compared to a lot of other sports, and I think it can own a niche in India as well. And from whatever I have seen about golf, I think it can own that niche of as a great platform and network with the right people over there. And when it comes to technological advancement, always helps. I think the fundamental answer to try and find the fundamental question to try and find the answer to is, how is this positively going to make an impact on the fan experience? And I think that needs to be the starting point. It's great to have all the technology, all the data, all the analytics, but is it adding value to me as a fan? If what will it take for me to convert you to a golf fan? And I think that's the question we need to try and find an answer to, and the answer exists, right? I don't think there is ever going to be an answer that, oh, I don't know how to convert so and so to a fan of any sport, right? So I think the way to look at it is identify that niche who you can go after, and what will it take for you to get them to become fans of the sport, right? And this template will obviously apply for any sport, and golf is no different.
Yeah. So thank you, Siddharth, for doing this session with us. And I'm sure a lot of attendees have found it beneficial from knowledge point of view. And I must say this, that you are a knowledge bank in Indian sports, probably. So you have been like extremely, the data points which you have mentioned, these are important, and this will be helpful for the audience and for all of us. So thank you to the entire team at Sports Interactive for facilitating this session with Siddharth. Yeah, I think Siddharth, you are there. So just one final word which you want to say to our attendees.
Thank you to everyone for making time on the weekend to come and join in. Thank you to Arshi and the entire team at Bridge for having. I just represent the organization, so I think credit needs to go to everybody at the team at Sports Interactive for me to be able to share all this. And no, thanks everyone, and hope you have a great rest of the weekend.
Yeah, thank you. So for the audience, this session, the recording of this session will also be available on our YouTube channel, and it is also live on Facebook, so it will be there. So feel free to share it with your friends, and let's all spread the knowledge of Indian sports. And this is a major contribution in increasing the popularity and in knowing the technicalities of any sport. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.